This is George Harrison's 1964 Gibson SG. Harrison used it from 1966 to 1969, and this shouldn't come as a surprise to most Beatles fans. The guitar is prominently featured in several of the Beatles' most well-known promotional clips, including Rain and Paperback Writer, both versions including the black and white ones that aired on The Ed Sullivan Show, as well as Lady Madonna and Hey Bulldog. But did Harrison ever play this guitar live on stage? The answer is yes, but I believe it only happened twice. Here's the story. So first, let's talk about the NME Poll Winners concerts of the 1960s. The popular British music magazine, New Musical Express, would hold yearly award shows called the NME Poll Winners concerts. Not surprisingly, the Beatles were on the bill for basically every year they were a touring band. Unfortunately, some of these historic moments were not captured on video. So the Beatles first played the 1963 NME Poll Winners concert, but it was not recorded. To my knowledge, no audio or video footage exists. Luckily though, we do still have plenty of images. I have to mention this hilarious fact. This was a Poll Winners concert, right? But the Beatles didn't actually win any awards this year. This is because it was a 1963 show, so the polls were conducted last year in 1962, and at that point, the Beatles had only released Love Me Do. So by the time this concert came around in late April, though, the Beatles had since scored 2 #1 singles and released their first album, Please Please Me. It would seem that NME made an exception due to their recent popularity and booked them to play as the second to last act of the night, which is a good spot to be. So moving on though, in 1964, the Beatles again played the NME show. This is a famous performance. The whole thing was filmed and it's widely available on YouTube. For my money, this performance might actually be the best example of capturing the Beatles' live energy in their absolute prime. It's a really good performance. You have to watch it. Next year, in 1965, the Beatles again played the NME Poll Winners concert, and again, we're lucky to have great video quality of the entire show. I've actually always liked this performance too, because it's one of the rare examples where Lennon actually switches to the Gibson J160E for I Feel Fine. I don't think this performance comes even close to the 1964 performance, but it's still a great show. Finally, we arrive at 1966. This is the final year of the Beatles' touring career. Again, the Beatles played the Poll Winners concert, but due to contractual issues, cameras were actually turned off during their performance and nothing was filmed or recorded. Seriously. We even have footage of other bands at the concert, as well as the Beatles receiving the award itself, right? But nothing from the actual performance. Now, there's a lot of lost Beatles footage, but this one in particular is really unfortunate. This show on May 1st, 1966, it's unique for a couple of reasons. First, it marks the very last time the Beatles would ever play live in the UK. I wonder if they had known this at the time, if the choice to capture the moment would have been different. But it also happens to be one of the rare occurrences where George Harrison played his Gibson SG live on stage, and it really looks like he used it for the entire show. You can see him playing it in basically every shot. In this photo, it looks like he's attaching a capo, and here he is singing If I Needed Someone, presumably. It's great that we have so many awesome photos of this concert, but I admit it's pretty painful to accept that a historic concert like this wasn't documented. Anyway, moving on, so would we ever see George play this SG on stage again? The answer, yes, believe it or not, Germany. Now I know what you're thinking, Beatles fans. The Beatles tour in 1966 was well documented. There's tons of videos of George and he always has an Epiphone Casino unless he's playing the 12 string, just like Japan, right? Well, sort of. A lot of people forget that when you look at a list of Beatles tour dates, you can't just count that as one show. In many cases, the Beatles would perform multiple times in a single day, often doing a daytime show and an evening show. They didn't always film both shows though. And this brings us to June 24th, 1966, Munich, Germany. And I know everybody loves to teach me about pronunciation, so I'll just give this my best shot. Circus Krone Bau. The Beatles performed an afternoon show at 5:15 and an evening show at 9 o'clock. It's this evening show that something interesting happened. Now, an observant Beatle fan on the photo forum, Vitali, pointed out that the location of Ringo's microphone stand varies between both shows. This is how we can tell the daytime versus the evening time. And the fact that I think that this is a great discovery shows how much of a Beatle fan I actually am. So I've searched and searched and searched, and these are the only photos that I can find of this moment during the evening show. So you guys probably know me by now. I am pretty diligent when it comes to looking through photos, but man, these were really not easy to find. I have to thank my buddy Marcelo. He helped me find a couple of these. These are seriously rare pictures. I wish they were better quality, but the evidence is pretty clear. George Harrison definitely played a Gibson SG. And again, Beatle fans, I know what you're going to say. Oh, he probably used it for If I Needed Someone. No, he didn't. He used the Rickenbacker 12 for that. Curiously, he also played his usual Epiphone Casino for the majority of the set. So what did he use the SG for? The answer is Day Tripper. Here's a super rare film clip from an old German newsreel. Now, there's no sound, it's silent footage, but this is probably the exact moment that you're seeing that photo that I showed earlier was taken. Look how George walks up to the mic.
1, 2, 3.
I'm pretty confident in saying that it's Day Tripper, because if you look at other concert footage from around this time, if they did If I Needed Someone, typically George would get his own mic and then John and Paul would share. But it seems like when they play Day Tripper, maybe because there's basically two lead vocals on that song, John and Paul sing separate mics, and then George uses the third one. So that's what's happening here. Now, why did he choose to play it for this one show? That's anybody's guess. It's not outside the realm of possibility, though. We know that Harrison carried the SG as his spare guitar during the 1966 tour. The question is, why did he use it for the guitar solo on Day Tripper? Last time everyone said, oh, well, maybe the string broke, but it didn't because he went right back to the casino. So you tell me, what do you think? Either way, if anybody has more photos of this, please send me a message. That's all for today, but I'll leave you with one more fun fact. George Harrison would eventually give this Gibson SG to Pete Ham, and you can see him playing it in a bunch of live Badfinger footage. Alright everybody, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.